The reason Real Madrid is a powerhouse in the game has just been revealed. Not Ronaldo, not Benzema, not even Vinicius. It's one guy from upstairs who's been controlling everything. For years, he's been the genius behind the show, making sure everything at the club stays intact, but the question is, who exactly is the guy? Florentino Perez was born on March 8, 1947, and from his early life up to his college days, he preferred to keep his life private. Perez ended the Polytechnic University of Madrid, and after graduation he decided to jump onto politics, joining the Union of Democratic Center Party in 1979, where he served in the Madrid City Council. In 1970, he'd already married the love of his life, Maria de Los Angeles Sandoval, and now his personal life was on track. Perez's real story began in 1995. He already had a strong background in politics. By that year, Perez had served as a Secretary General in the Democratic Reformist Party and was the Vice Chairman of OCP Constructions. But by 1995, Perez wanted something different. He'd grown up to become just like every other local in the town, a Real Madrid fan. And so when the opportunity presented itself to become the leading figure at the club, Perez declared his intention to run. At that point, it seemed like it was all set to work for him. He became the candidate with the highest number of signatures needed to confirm his candidacy. But by the time the results rolled out a few weeks later, Perez lost out to Ramon Mendoza. Still though, he wasn't ready to quit, and 5 years later he was back at it again. This time though, it was a changed man. Politics had taught him to be hard and super smart. The general elections of the year 2000, and Perez had a plan to impress the owners, the socios. Madrid is one of the few clubs in the world without a recognized CEO, and that's because it's the fans who run the club. The socios are a 2000 carefully selected member committee made up of fans who've been paying the $150 membership fee all their lives. And so when the elections rolled around the corner, Perez knew just being popular or smart enough wasn't going to win it for him. So he put out a 2-point agenda that was going to reel everyone in. The first one, well, Madrid had won the Champions League in 1999 and 2000. On the field, they were impressive, but off it, they were in trouble. Being in politics that long, Perez understood the economic dangers at the club. Madrid was in debt, and the economic policies at the time didn't look like they'd be able to get the club out of it soon. President Lorenzo Sanz didn't seem to care, he just wanted the club to win. And so Perez made that the first point of his campaign, to not just get rid of the club's debt, but to make them a powerhouse both on and off the field. It worked too, because people started taking notes and paying attention. But where the real hook was in his second point agenda. And now this, it seemed impossible. At the time, Luis Figo was the best player in the world. He'd won the Ballon d'Or in 1999 and played for Madrid's arch rivals Barcelona. Had just won La Liga with them too, when Perez announced to the public that if he won, he would sign Figo to Real Madrid. In modern day terms, it was like Perez was saying he would get a 2011 version of Lionel Messi to switch teams to Real Madrid next season. People thought he was mad, but the crazy thing is, the same people kind of became so curious, they actually wanted to see if it would happen. Even his opposition Lorenzo Sanz called him a bluff. But behind the scenes, Perez had been working on this plan for months, involving both Figo's agent and the man himself, with a deal they simply couldn't refuse. And weeks later, Perez came out as the top pick. He won the elections with 55% of the votes. Now though, it was time for the main question. The whole world was waiting to see if Perez would be able to come good on his promise. And a few weeks later, to the surprise of basically everyone watching, it happened. Luis Figo, an icon in his prime years at Barcelona, had switched clubs thanks to Florentino Perez. It wasn't going to just be a one-time thing, because on that day, Perez outlined his true vision for the club. The Figo transfer was the start of something big. Perez wanted to make the best players in the world play for Madrid, and this, guys, was the official start of the Galacticos era that changed the club and made Madrid become a global powerhouse. By 2005, Perez was a hit. 5 years into his tenure as president, and he'd already gotten rid of the club's debt and made the team an economic giant off the pitch. Madrid had now become a very marketable brand, and different companies wanted to invest in the team. On the pitch, Perez made good on his promise to get the best players in the world. He'd signed David Beckham from Manchester United in 2003, signed Ronaldo Nazario from Inter Milan in 2002, signed Zinedine Zidane for a club record fee of $77.5 million in 2001. And it's important to note, guys, that all these players weren't coming in towards the end of their careers. They were all in their prime years, meaning the club was going to get the very best out of them. They still kept the winning habit too. By 2005, in his first tenure, Madrid had won La Liga twice and a Champions League title in 2002. And all of this was enough to get Perez re-elected into office in 2004, with 94.2% of the total votes. But 2 years later, in 2006, it all changed, and Madrid were about to enter into the dark days. There are always two sides to a plan, and Perez's idea of getting the best players in the world, well, it came at a cost. To balance the playing time and the books, he opted to sell some of the club's homegrown players, or the ones he met at the club. And one of them was the man so good he got a role named after him, Claude Makélélé. Makélélé was sold to Chelsea in a disappointing transfer in 2003 for $32.5 million. The truth is, the guy was the holding force in the team that gave the freedom for all the Galacticos attacking forces to play. And once he was gone, they started to crumble. In 2006, Perez had seen enough. He was a family man and probably wanted more time with his family, or he was tired of the day-to-day running of the club. But in the end, he made the decision to step down so the club could get a new direction. What followed next were the dark days. From 2005 to 2007, they didn't win a single trophy in any competition. It was clear the club was missing the leadership direction Perez had established years back. And on his part, he wasn't just going to sit back and watch all the hard work he put in place for the team go down the drain. Also, some people thought Perez quit the club because they were failing, and he didn't want to be a part of it. But in 2009, Perez had seen enough. The club was floundering, and even worse, their biggest rivals hadn't just caught up to them, they'd beaten them in everything. Barcelona won the treble that season, and suddenly Madrid was no longer the biggest club in Spain. Something needed to be done. The Madrid socios knew that too, and so when the time for the general elections rolled around the corner again, they voted to bring Florentino back, and his presidential mandate was the Galactico 2.0. Perez was the only candidate who could boast of the $58 million fee guarantee needed to run for the position. So he won it hands down, and just a few weeks into his return, he came with a bang. Signed Cristiano Ronaldo from Real Madrid, and it was more like a continuation of something they'd seen before. That 2009 transfer window was iconic. Ronaldo signing from Manchester United for $80 million was the headline move. But alongside, Madrid made some big signings too. Ricardo Kaká was signed from AC Milan for $57 million. The guy won the Ballon d'Or 2 years back. They also signed another teenage French sensation, Karim Benzema, for $35 million. And Xavi Alonso came in for $40 million too. A statement of intent. They won the Super Cup that season, but that was as good as it got. And after going trophyless for the first time under his watch, Perez knew this problem wasn't with the player. The change needed to come from the guy at the dugout. So he got rid of Manuel Pellegrini, and his replacement, he was the special one. Perez had officially taken Real Madrid into that rivalry era with Barcelona. It was a contrast of two different ideas. At Barca, they had Joan Laporta as president, who in turn appointed Pep Guardiola as head coach, and created a system to succeed with Lionel Messi central to it. And the Madrid response was to get Perez back as president, appoint the treble-winning coach from the previous season, and make Cristiano Ronaldo the center of attraction at Madrid. Game on. It was peak El Clasico football at this point, and Perez was determined to make sure he came out with the upper hand. But in the first meeting of both powerhouses, it didn't end well. A 5-0 El Clasico loss. Huge. Barcelona went on to win the league and the Champions League that season, but the only reason they didn't win the treble for a second time in 3 years was because in the Copa del Rey final, Madrid found a way. Ronaldo's goal salvaged Madrid's season. In the summer though, there were growing concerns. Barcelona only seemed to be getting better, and Perez knew now he needed a comeback from his team. There were signs of improvement too. In this same season, they got to the semi-finals of the Champions League for the first time in 8 years. And so in 2012, the charge was to do better. And they did. Spectacularly too. Winning La Liga was an understatement. They dominated. They had the most points by a champion-winning team in La Liga at the time, scored the most goals. Unplayable. On a personal level though, 2012 was a sad one for Perez, because his wife of 42 years, Maria Angelis, died after battling lung cancer, and left him with his 3 kids, Eduardo, Florentino, and Maria Angelis. The grief of losing his partner after such a long time together should have been enough to keep Perez out and maybe away from the game. But instead, Madrid became his everything. Back to the team now, and Madrid just missed out on what could have been the crowning moment in the eyes of many people. That 2011-12 Madrid team was the best one not to win the Champions League, losing out to Bayern Munich in the semis. And it was the same thing in 2013. Guess all of that disappointment got to Mourinho because he left the club that summer, meaning Perez was in the market for a new coach. The club's objective was simple now. They'd already won La Liga and the Copa del Rey in recent years. But to get back to that superpower status, they needed to win the Champions League, so Perez called on a special Italian, and the man delivered. La Decima. After 12 years, the mission was finally complete. It was the crowning moment for the club. I even heard that as part of their celebrations, Perez made sure every Madrid fan in the city got that exclusive link to Mr. Football by showing them how to subscribe down below. Champion celebration. The work Perez put in behind the scenes to make La Decima a reality that season, it can't go unnoticed. He was a proper businessman and at the same time club operator. He'd been given a 4th term in office at the start of 2013, and to follow that up, Perez secured some proper deals for talent in the country, Isco and Asia Iralamendi. But the real headline deal was the arrival of another Galactico, Gareth Bale, and in his first season for Madrid, he turned up. In the Champions League final win that season, Bale was immense. He scored in the final too. Money well spent, and put Perez in the clear. After all this success, it's easy to forget that Perez was also a businessman, still working for the construction group ACS. As a majority stakeholder, he was working overtime to make sure both projects were a success, and in the summer of 2015, it was time for another upheaval. Carlo Ancelotti was gone, and Perez and the board decided to sack him after failing to win a major trophy in the 2014-15 season. Barcelona won a second treble in 6 years. As a replacement, Perez brought in Rafael Benitez, but a few weeks in, it was clear he and the team weren't a fit. And instead of going for another major name in the market, Perez took a blueprint from his rivals Barcelona. He was on hand to see what Barcelona did with one of their own, a former player who turned coach at the club and understood how the team worked. So Perez's next answer was to bring the French magician from the shadows of an assistant coach and B team manager to head coach. Zidane was now the coach of the first team, and in return he delivered in his first season. Madrid won the Champions League in 2016 after beating Atletico Madrid on penalties in Milan. And what followed next was a period of European domination. Between 2016 and 2018, Real Madrid ruled the world. They won the Champions League back-to-back 3 times in a row. Let that sink in for a second. Before Los Blancos, no team had ever managed to win the Champions League back-to-back, and Perez and Zidane had built a team that managed that feat. 2018 though was the end of an era for Madrid, because in the summer of that year, Perez was in a position he knew all too well. The only difference was this one was even tougher. Madrid's all-time top scorer, the best player at the club, and possibly in the team's history, Cristiano Ronaldo, had left for Juventus for a club record fee of $100 million. It didn't just end with Ronaldo. Zidane decided to step down that summer, and Perez's response was to get another player, Julen Lopetegui, as the head coach, but 2018-19 didn't work. A trophyless season again, and in the season that followed, Perez acted fast and brought Zizou back in time for the 1920 season. 2019-20 was a special football year for Madrid and basically every club in the world. COVID hit and it changed the game. In 2019, Perez announced plans to renovate the Bernabeu. The plan was to keep Madrid at the top for as long as possible and make Madrid the center of attraction. And I guess plans like this helped Perez and Zidane to attract another Galactico, because in the same summer, Eden Hazard became the most expensive player in the club's history, signing for $120 million. But looking back at it now, I bet Perez wishes they'd thought twice about this one, because once that COVID economic crisis hit, everyone was running at a loss. And despite winning La Liga that season, Perez knew this was a case of balancing the books. Else they'd have to start making huge sales or deal with FFP laws, something they'd been trying to avoid all through his tenure. And so in 2021, Perez figured out a way to rake in extra cash for the club by taking on the system that made the club in the first place. Together with Andrea Agnelli, Perez had created the European Super League. According to the man himself, the new Super League aimed to provide competition to the Champions League. I mean, yeah, sure, it's easy to condemn that idea like everyone else did, but looking at it from Perez's part, the man had a point. Perez claimed the Champions League was losing its value. He felt that the competition was dying because the proper matches were only played towards the end, and people wanted to see the big teams play more because, quite frankly, it was matches like this that pulled in revenue from TV streams and stadium tickets. Perez cited the European Basketball League as his reference and claimed that it was the creation of a new Super Basketball League in the continent that saved the competition. And when he got asked about the elite status of member teams in the competition, he claimed that there'd be a regulation/promotion status to the league too. Seems like he had it all figured out, but unfortunately when the idea was launched on April 18th, 2021, people didn't buy into it. The Super League was met with a lot of chaos, rejected by fans around the world who felt the league was just another chance for the big teams to get even bigger. And by the 21st of April, merely 3 days after it was created, more than half of the member teams had pulled out of the competition, including all 6 English teams. Perez still stood on his ground and insisted he wasn't going to back down. He had the legal backing too, and so operations regarding the league got suspended, and he set out to create an even better proposal that would appeal to everyone. Back to matters on the pitch now, and in 2022, Perez and Madrid were at the forefront of European football once again. Another Champions League title. This time they did the double too. They won the league and the Champions League and stayed on top of the competition almost all through. Winning the 14th Champions League was never going to be enough for Perez. I mean, he wanted more, the fans demanded more, and he didn't just want Madrid to win now, he wanted his team to do it with the best players in grand style. And that's why he spent almost all summer chasing this guy, Kylian Mbappe. Mbappe to Madrid was the biggest transfer saga of 2022. In the summer of 2021, it seemed like the deal was done. Mbappe had 1 year left on his contract, and PSG had already made it clear they weren't going to lose him for free, and Perez sensed the opportunity for a steal here. So with days left to the end of the window, he dropped a $150 million bid for Mbappe, but it was rejected. He increased the bid to $180 million and finally $200 million, but both still got rejected as well. The window closed, and by January 2022, Perez launched the same bid one last time. PSG rejected it, and for the first time in his tenure, Perez saw a player do him dirty. Mbappe signed a new 3-year contract with PSG and left Perez furious. For the first time since his tenure as president, Perez actually came out to talk about a transfer that never happened. Mbappe is already forgotten. His dream was to play for Real Madrid. We wanted to do it last August and they didn't let him leave. He kept saying he wanted to play at Real Madrid, and like 15 days before, he changed the situation. I can sense the undertone of anger in there. Still, Perez meant his word when he said Madrid had forgotten about Mbappe. 2022-23 came along and they just went about their business just fine. It's 2024 now, the season ended a couple of weeks back, and looking back at Perez and Madrid, it's safe to say they won. It was a huge one of personal wins for the team. The new Bernabeu project was finally completed, making the stadium one of the best in the world. They won the Champions League and La Liga again, their second double in 2 years. And looking at the team they've got now, there's a Galactico 3.0 in the works. The core of this new-look Real Madrid team is insane. Players like Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo Goes, Aurelien Tchouameni, Eduardo Camavinga, Arda Güler, Federico Valverde, Jude Bellingham, all these guys are 25 and younger, and they're all playing at the highest level and winning trophies for the team. Perhaps though on a personal level, even if he doesn't want to admit it, Perez's biggest win was in the off-season, not the Champions League or La Liga. After looking like it was over 2 seasons back, his record of pulling in the biggest talent in the world to the Spanish capital remains intact. Kylian Mbappe to Real Madrid is a confirmed deal, and Madrid signed him for the freaking sum of $0. That's right, Perez got him on a free transfer. If he's anything like he's been proving to be the last couple of years, Mbappe at Real Madrid could reach a level with sky-breaking potential. And to know he got one of the best players of his generation for free would be a genius masterstroke for him. Perez is the guy, but sometimes not all mega talent signings can go the right way, and Perez knows this too. In 2010, Barca got one of the best attackers in the world, and the dude flopped for 9 months. It wasn't just him too. Actually, Pep Guardiola signed a host of players in his 4-year stint at Barcelona. From big names to unknown potential, it's crazy to see how they all turned out, and you can too by hitting that button to see all of Pep Guardiola's 17 signings and where they are now.